This is the Conservative Czar, September 21st, 2012. I wanted to spend some time clarifying a little bit the video I put on yesterday, which was talking about the possibility of a war before the election. And I wanted to clarify the path. There are actually two separate paths to war in the Middle East. One is the rise of the Islamist states surrounding Israel, and at some point that getting clarified through a war. And the other one is the other path to war is a nuclearization of Iran and nuclear bombs in the hands of the Iranian theocracy. So they're both separate to some extent, but they're directly related to each other. The Obama-Clinton foreign policy has caused the problem with the Islamist states. We didn't have Islamist states in Libya, Tunisia, Egypt. Iraq was going to go there anyway, and it will eventually go there. Iran's there. Syria's about to fall. Now, Syria was always a terrorist state, but in the Ba'athist Party, where Assad's father came from, are secular. And so their commitment to the cause was always, from a secular standpoint, a less dangerous standpoint than a committed Islamist's hatred of the United States and Israel. So the danger in Syria is even going to get greater. We wouldn't have had this. Let's say if George Bush was the president, Mubarak would still be in Egypt, I'm convinced. He wouldn't have given up Mubarak, maybe at all, but Obama-Clinton foreign policy did. And the key to that rise of the Islamists is Egypt. Well, take that path alone, and it is a path to war. The Islamists want a war. Israel I don't think it wants a war, but they look at the inevitability of a war. It's a near inevitability. In Iran, that's not totally the fault of the Obama-Clinton foreign policy. The Iranian situation has been there before Obama took over, but he's had 4 years to deal with the problem, and he has not dealt with it. Now, here's where the two kind of fold together into why we might have an early war, especially against Iran. The Islamists aren't really ready yet. The Islamists in Egypt, for example, are still consolidating power. They have exercised their will over the military to some extent, but it's going to take them 6 months or a year, if the trend continues, for the Islamists in Egypt to take firm control of the country where they can influence the direction of the country towards Israel. So there's a breathing space of 6 months to a year where the Islamists surrounding Israel are not quite ready. In Iran, the situation is coming to a head immediately. Well, this is where the two come together, and why an early conflict, it becomes a strategically sound idea, especially from the Obama-Clinton foreign policy perspective. And it goes like this. If we wait to deal with Iran militarily a year, the Islamist states are going to be ready to intervene against Israel in the middle of the conflict so that we would have an all-out war with the Islamists prepared for the war. If we attack Iran now, I think the Islamists will react, riots, they will try to mount offensives against Israel, but it isn't going to have an impact. So there is a possibility that we have a window to attack Iran where the Islamists are not quite ready to attack Israel. You go out 2 years from now, a year and a half or 2 years from now, let's say we even postpone the nuclearization of Iran, the Islamists are going to be much stronger and the war more difficult. So the sooner we deal with Iran before the Islamist states can get together, Syria's in a civil war, go back to Libya's in a civil war, Tunisia's Islamist, Egypt is heading down a very radical Islamist path, but they're not ready. So the reason that the benefits of an early war is that you might not have a complete conflagration with the Islamist states attacking Israel. So that's a reason for an early war, is to deal with that problem and try to separate it from the Islamist problem that we're going to have inevitably down the road. I want to make two other points of clarification. One is that the Iranian problem can go away, in a sense, if Iran surrenders. In other words, if Iran just all of a sudden sees all the things arraying, the 3 aircraft carriers are out there and they know that the attack is inevitable, we surrender. That is a possibility. I don't think it's probable. I think it's highly unlikely, given the nature of the players that we're dealing with. But it's possible, and that would eliminate the Iranian problem if the Iranians surrender. Short of that, there's no solution that's good. In the case of the rise of the Islamists, there's also another thing that can happen that would change the nature of the Middle East over the next year. And that is the idea that the Egyptian military is not totally co-opted yet. And they're not. The Egyptian military is still independent of the Muslim Brotherhood and the Islamist civilian government. Now, and in recent months, the military, every time there's been a confrontation, has backed down to the Muslim Brotherhood. And there could be a lot of different reasons why that might be the case. But if the Egyptian military decides, no, they don't want to go down this path, and take over the government of Egypt and stop the slide toward the Muslim Brotherhood Islamist state, that would change the whole picture of the Middle East. The danger of the Islamist states without Egypt causing a problem with Israel is nowhere near as significant as if they had Egypt with them. So there are two possibilities. The Iranian surrender and the Egyptian military decide to take over the country. My problem with both of them is I don't think they're probable. I think they're highly unlikely, and still the near inevitability of a war on the fronts, the Iranian front and the Islamist front, facing the Middle East, primarily caused by the foreign policy of Obama-Clinton, is right in front of us. And an early war, I even think before the election, is possible. I'm not predicting it. I'm saying it's possible. This is the Conservative Czar. See you next time.